quorum slide? By a kind of vote of 162 members, we have a quorum. We're back in session. Article 5. Mr. Chairman, for the main motion on Article 5.
Mr. Moderator, that the town vote Article 5 as recommended.
As recommended, this is for the purpose of funding non-capital projects. This is to vote to transfer the sum of $1,388,427 from certified free cash for the items listed in the spreadsheet. Information technology. General government. Yep. Mr. Johnson.
Leonard Johnson, Precinct 5. We have studied this before. It seems to me this is a repeating theme here tonight. But my major point is that I think this should not include just North Falmouth and West Falmouth, but also Hatchville. I realize that the two stations are in North Falmouth and West Falmouth, but we need also to consider the broader location and providing fire services to people in Hatchville. I don't think I should amend this to include Hatchville, but I hope that's a general understanding that we would include Hatchville.
Mr. Sousa?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, this proposal will include an analysis of fire dispatches throughout the community, not just in a segmented area of the community. However, it is focusing on needs in this specific area, given the current station utilization that is in place.
Okay, anything else under general government? Public safety. Mr. Callahan.
Jim Callahan, Precinct 5. Just a quick question on the fingerprinting machine. It came up at our precinct meeting, and a lot of us are unaware that the teachers, for example, have to get fingerprints and have to go to Bourne and pay a certain amount of money. So I guess the question I have, will this fingerprinting machine be of use by everybody in the town that needs to be fingerprinted? That's all. Thank you.
Chief.
This is going to be the electronic fingerprint machine because we have ink, and this will be electronic. And if the teachers need to be fingerprinted, they just need to come in and be fingerprinted.
Okay. Anything else under public safety? Community development? Facilities? Highway? Fleet services? Engineering? Parks? Recreation? Beach? Ms. Rowitz?
Ray Rowitz, Precinct 5. I was curious about the roller curtains for the concession stands, whether it would accommodate a shading like the present ones do, if there's any way to do that, or if it matters.
Mr. Magato?
Bruce Magato, Beat Superintendent. Currently, those 5/8 sheets of plywood weigh a little over 40 pounds, and they bounce up and down in the wind. And one of these days, they're going to come loose, and they're going to hit somebody in the head. We've been looking at getting them replaced. Our turn has finally come up with a capital plan to replace them with roller curtains so that they are safer, but also they will reduce theft and crime breaking into the concessions. So we've been looking forward to having this go through.
Okay, anything else under beaches? Question will come on the main motion as recommended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, unanimous. Article 6, Mr. Chairman of the Planning Board for the main motion.
Mr. Moderator, I move Article 6 as printed.
As printed. Okay, yep, Ms. Valiella.
Virginia Valiela, Precinct 5, and Vice Chair of the Water Quality Management Committee, which has worked with the Planning Board, thank you very much, on updating this. I'm waiting for the slide to come up for Article 6. They're all the Planning Board slides together. Well, while she's locating that, Article 6 is a very important housekeeping measure. In 1988, the town meeting established the Coastal Pond Overlay District, and that is the second slide. Do they have a first slide? With this slide, which I hope they will show, that showed the impaired watersheds that flowed towards Nantucket Sound. And in 2001, that map was updated, and again, it's the map that's not up there yet, that included some watersheds on the Buzzards Bay side. The map that you're looking at now, and perhaps I think we'll just stay with the map you're looking at now. Okay. So this is an updated map from the work that was done in 1988. And the reason that it was needed to be updated was twofold. In 2004, the state hired the U.S. Geological Survey to do a regional watershed study. So that's not only the watersheds in Falmouth, but also Bourne, Sandwich, and Mashpee, and Joint Base Cape Cod, because in many cases, the watersheds in our town are shared with one or two other towns when you go upstream. The second reason that we need to update this map is that the map that the town currently has on the books is missing 4 watersheds that are actually impaired. And those watersheds, just for your information, starting in the northwest corner, the purple, and then there's a slightly lavender one underneath it. That's Rand's Canal and Fiddler's Cove. Those 2 watersheds are impaired. Moving south down to the purple that is around Quistit Harbor, that one is currently missing from the town maps. And then over to yellow with Falmouth Inner Harbor. Those 4 watersheds are not currently on the town's books, you might say. So tonight, we are asking that you vote this updated map with the updated information from the Geological Survey and including these 4 watersheds that we're missing. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any discussion on Article 6? Mr. Walker?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Grant Walker, Precinct 3. Just a question, but first, thank you for all the work that you've done on this. I know this is needed. So it's just a question, just a point of information. The Coastal Pond Overlay District already exists in the bylaw, so we're just adding some more area to it.
Yes, you are correcting the current map, and I are adding more area because there were 4 watersheds missing.
The entirety of those watersheds are considered part of the coastal pond that's governed by the overlay district?
Yes, okay. Each one of those watersheds flows into some coastal pond.
Yeah. But all the specifications of what people may do in and or near the watersheds and the ponds. That's in the original bylaw.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Mr. Hargraves?
Peter Hargraves, Precinct 9. I can't resist the opportunity to become informed here. I understand the utility of a zoning map and the opportunity to change and define what we can do in different parts of town, but could you briefly explain the utility of the watershed map and how it constrains or enables anything that we really, as citizens, might be interested in knowing about?
Okay. We'll try and do that in 1 minute. All of our coastal ponds are extremely important to the town for recreation. It's where our highest real estate is. For some people, it's a livelihood. And so it's very important to maintain the health of those coastal ponds. There has been so much development, largely residential, that the amount of nitrogen coming out of this house plus this house plus this house plus this house has reached the point where these coastal ponds have exceeded their sometimes called carrying capacity. They've exceeded the ability of the pond to absorb that nitrogen. The state required each town to do a study of all of its coastal ponds and determine which ones were impaired and needed to take steps to reduce the amount of nitrogen going into those ponds. Each pond is different. The town has already moved ahead with the Little Pond watershed, and we believe that there has been enough sewering done there that that pond should begin to show signs of recovering. That is currently being monitored by the Geological Survey and also by the town through a regular program we have of summer monitoring. Ultimately, this is Falmouth. This is our character. It's our ponds and our shellfish and our recreation. And so you basically have an orderly program that identifies areas that contribute nitrogen to those ponds, and the town has a program to gradually reduce the amount of nitrogen where it's excessive. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Question will come on the main motion as printed. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it by the 2/3 majority, and I so declare. Article 7, Mr. Chairman of the Planning Board for the main motion.
Mr. Moderator, I move Article 7 to amend Section 240-192 of the zoning bylaw as printed, and to further amend Section 240-193 by adding a new subsection C to read, C, no certificate of occupancy will be issued until an as-built plan prepared by a registered architect, landscape architect, or professional engineer has been submitted and verified by the planning board's designee within 7 days of the as-built submittal that all conditions of the approved plan have been met. As an explanation, this change is intended to deal with the changes in technology that we've come up with in the last few years that will govern the installation of structures such as pole barns and solar canopies as accessory uses will be included in site plan review, as they have no floor area, and further to ensure that the site improvements required by the site plan approval have been properly installed, requested by the planning board, and this article was requested by the planning board in consultation with the building commissioner.
Okay, could we put the slide back up, the first slide there that had the main motion? Okay, so it's what's printed. Main motion says printed in the warrant, but this is the new section C. It takes planning board's agent and says planning board's designee within 7 days of the as-built submittal. Okay, so that'll be the main motion discussion on Article 7. Mr. Latimer, and then Mr. Davis.
Richard Latimer, Precinct 1. I am opposed to this, as well as following ones which seek to impose limitations and restrictions on people who choose to install solar energy facilities, including the structures upon which those facilities are sited. You know, there's a saying that, you know, think globally and act locally. We are facing a serious problem with global warming, the denials of our current president notwithstanding. We are feeling that here in the town of Falmouth with the rising sea levels, the erosion of beaches. It's ongoing, and the only way it's going to be stopped is if people on the local level start saying, we don't need to and we won't burn any unnecessary fossil fuels. And the only way we can stop burning fossil fuels is to allow the free and open development of alternative energy sources such as non-invasive solar panels. The Koch brothers have not yet dreamed up any kind of solar panel syndrome that I'm aware of. So I am objecting to this effort by our planning board to put restrictions on people who want to install solar panels, and this part of it is, well, we're going to regulate the structure on which it is built. We will hear about how bad the project is up at Kenyon's Market. I drive by Kenyon's Market and I see that's beautiful. Here is a win-win situation. Here's a merchant who's providing some cover for his customers parking their cars when it's snowing or raining. At the same time, when the sun is shining, he's getting free energy and he's not burning fossil fuels. We don't need this bylaw. It is unnecessary. What is the problem? So some problems with aesthetics, some problems with, well, we might want to look at the vegetation. These are innocuous structures. They do no harm. They do good. And we should not be trying to restrict them. Thank you.
Mr. Matamis.
Jerry Patamis, Precinct 2. This is a pretty simple amendment. Told me to write it down, so I wrote this one down. It's simple enough. After landscape architect, you insert professional land surveyor. Then it would be landscape architect, professional land surveyor, or professional engineer. Professional land surveyors are equally adequate of measuring dimensional offsets and things like that. That's the gist of the motion.
Okay, so in section C, after landscape architect, add professional landscape surveyor, and then it reads the same after that. Professional land surveyor, I'm sorry. Land surveyor, I said landscape, sorry. Professional land surveyor. Okay, discussion just on the amendment. Hearing none, the question, oh, on the amendment, Mr. Smolowitz?
Thank you. Ron Smolowitz, Precinct 8. I guess my question is regarding the structure. So if it's just a land surveyor, that's just the position. So when somebody, this structure, are there going to be other aspects of it that are going to be, have to be, let's say, certified in the as-built plan, such as its structural strength, its height, its material? I mean, I don't understand how a land surveyor could do anything more than just positioning the structure. This article doesn't tell me what the other requirements are going to be regarding this structure. So maybe somebody could explain it a little bit more. I mean, I don't even understand if its concern is solar, why we're going to a general term of structure. So what are the requirements that may be put on somebody under this proposal?
They would be requirements under the building code and under the building commissioner. Planning board won't get involved in any structural, other than the lot coverage and its location. And we only, on site plan review, is just a recommendation. We're not restricting these. We're very much in favor of solar, and we just see, we reasonably regulate where structures go on property, and we're just trying to include that in it. But all the questions you're asking about the actual structure is building code issues and not the planning boards.
Okay, this is just on the amendment, adding professional land surveyor. Mr. Latimer? Yeah.
Thank you. Again, Richard Latimer, Precinct 1. I would support the amendment for the simple reason that professional land surveyor will be less expensive for the landowner than a landscape architect will be. To me, the requirement of a landscape architect for what is essentially just a lot coverage issue is, again, if not deliberately, is certainly calculated to make these projects more expensive and therefore deter them. So I would support this amendment, but while still opposing the bylaw itself. We do not need this. And before we even talk about this, I think the planning board should explain the need for this. The need for this kind of level of planning that outweighs the benefit of just allowing people to install solar whenever they want to, wherever they want to, as long as they don't create a nuisance, which is subject to the neighbors who are filing a lawsuit. But why does the planning board want to get into this? I'd like to have some kind of explanation of that before we proceed. Again, I would support this amendment.
Okay, yep. Did you want to, no? No, okay, yeah, go ahead. On the amendment, yep, yeah.
Bob Baker, Precinct 4. I just have a question for the chair. I want to make sure I have this clear in my mind. We vote first on the amendment with a couple of words, then we vote secondly on this amendment.
Then we go back to
then
debate.
We vote to then the third vote is on the original motion.
So the first,
correct?
The first motion is whether or not to add professional land surveyor. Then we go back and we debate the underlying article either with or without the amendment, and then we take a vote on the underlying
Thank
article. Yep. Yep. Ms. O'Connell.
Maureen O'Connell, Precinct 4. Point of information. We're adding professional land surveyor. Are we deleting landscape?
No, adding it.
Just adding.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else on the amendment? The amendment is a simple majority. The underlying bylaw requires 2/3, but the amendment is a simple majority. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. It's apparent the chair said the ayes have it by a majority, and the amendment passes. Question will come back on to the main motion. Mr. Netto was next on my list.
Joe Netto, Precinct 9. I would hope that we would defeat this article. This is just another hurdle in trying to stop people who are trying to help the environment. I'm just appalled that every time we try to do something with alternative energy, we went through the wind turbine debacle. This has no moving parts, doesn't have any pressure, doesn't have any flicker. Interesting, Falmouth Youth Hockey put this up, and we were also supportive of Falmouth Youth Hockey when they went up to the arena and they put solar arrays above their parking. Nobody said anything when the Admiralty Apartments did it. And then Lemoyne's put this solar structure up, and I'm there just about every day going to the gym there. And I got to tell you, it's great. It was pouring this morning. I had a roof over my head. I got out of my truck, put my coat on. In the summertime, when I have my dog with me, I can at least go in there, park, because there's some shade. But the meeting started tonight with Selectman Braga mentioning, you know, the coastal resources of our town. Mr. Dyer got up and said the same thing as being on the planning board's representative on the Coastal Resiliency Committee. 60 years ago, I rode a bike down Minot and went to Minot Beach. The road I rode on, the beach I sat on, is about 200, if not 300 feet out in Vineyard Sound. And that was 60 years ago. It's gone. It's in the ocean. We have to start doing something. I mean, this is another impediment, but I thank the Energy Committee because right before I came to town meeting tonight, I hope most of you got this. I don't know how many of you have seen this, but they gave us some guidance on what to do with all these articles about solar photovoltaic. I think that's the correct pronunciation. And I appreciate their help in helping us straighten this out. And here's what they have to say about Article 7. They're asking us to vote it down. And that's what I'm going to do. And I want to vote down the one-year moratorium also. We have to act now. They are telling us that this would be in violation, whoops, my phone is moving here, in violation of Mass General laws. Oops, I'm sorry. That would prohibit solar arrays on the basis of aesthetics. Don't forget, one person's pleasure is another person's poison. We can all never agree on what something looks nice or bad. So what bothers me is if the planning board didn't realize this, and if the Energy Committee is telling us that this would violate General Law, Part 1, Title 7, Chapter 48, Section 3, which states, no zoning, and now I'm stating the Mass General Law. In other words, the Attorney General will probably return this to us and say it doesn't pass the muster. Again, no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall prohibit or unreasonably regulate the installation of solar energy systems or the building of structures that facilitates the collection of solar energy, except when necessary to protect the public health, safety, or welfare. Thank you.
The 4, okay, good.
What, Mr. Piera?
You were at the 4 minutes, but you're done, so that's good.
Oh, yeah, I'm all done.
Okay, Ms. Carey?
Rosemary Carey, Precinct 5, and I'm a member of the Energy Committee and one of the authors of the letter that we sent to town meeting members today. So I thank you for the covering the state law aspect, which I was prepared to read to the group, so I won't repeat that. But I just want to also say that many townspeople, the Energy Committee struggled with this for many months and brought our concerns to the Planning Board. And during that time, we discovered that the impetus for this article was the Planning Board seeing that the new solar canopy at Kenyon's Market and finding it not in keeping with the character of the town. So I would say many townspeople would disagree with that, finding solar canopies much more attractive than a bare asphalt lot. Solar canopies also represent our long-awaited transition away from coal, oil, and gas for energy to clean, renewable energy, as well as participation of our local businesses in the clean energy economy. So parking lot canopies provide outstanding opportunities for businesses to generate clean energy and stabilize their energy costs, and also make money on selling the energy back to the grid. They can direct stormwater and protect customers from rain and snow and extreme summer heat. And they also can easily be built in attractive ways that suit the character of the town. And so the Energy Committee has recommended a no on this article as written. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Putnam?
Rebecca Putnam, Precinct 9. I'm sorry, but this is becoming the planning board wanting to restrict us more and more and people from usage And solar is, it's one of the best producers. We have so much sun. I mean, we live on Cape Cod. Why would we want to tell a commercial property owner that they wouldn't want to put up, or you can't put up, solar panels, regardless if it's in a parking lot, on their building? What's next? Are they going to tell us we can't put solar panels on our roofs of our houses because it doesn't architecturally fit in with our neighborhoods? It's just another way to restrict and restrict and restrict. And the best thing ever is Google. The first thing that comes up when you ask, is it legal to restrict solar panels in Massachusetts? It says Massachusetts also prohibits restrictions on solar devices voiding any provision in an instrument relative to the ownership of use of real property, such property which purports to forbid or unreasonably restricts the installation of use of solar energy systems. So, and this is the Solar Department of Energy for the mass.gov. I mean, where does it stop? Again, do we want to be told where and when we can use an energy resource that's safe, clean, and, well, it should be here? I'd ask that you vote it down.
Okay, Ms. Lichtenstein?
Leslie Lichtenstein, Precinct 8. I also urge you to vote against this. I think it is, it's a polyglot. It's got too much stuff in there. If you want to prohibit pole buildings and say, we're not going to give you a certificate of occupancy, that's fine. You can't move in, can't put anything under the pole building. But certificate of occupancy on a lot, you've got a house, you're living in the house, you decide to put solar panels in the field next to your house, suddenly there's no occupancy permit. What, you're going to move out of your house? I mean, I don't think that this was well written. I don't think that a certificate of occupancy is the way to try to regulate solar panels, and of course they shouldn't be regulated anyway. Thank you. Please vote this down.
Okay, before I continue with my list, all of our speakers have been in the negative on the main motion. Is there anyone who wants to speak in favor of the main motion? Okay, Ms. Lowell.
Vicki Lowell, Precinct 1. I might be swimming against the tide, but I just think there's a little bit of lack of understanding of what this bylaw would do. It's site plan review is a process where the applicant comes to the planning board and they go over their plans and make sure they conform to zoning, and then they can make suggestions for changing the plan. Aesthetics could be part of it, but that's not really the major thing. It's will the traffic flow still work if you have a big solar installation there? Will the same number of parking spaces that are required be there? It sort of goes over all the zoning elements, because you don't want to put something up and then find out you didn't conform to zoning. And I think they have done this in consultation with the building commissioner, because there's a lot of detail. If you, let's say the Falmouth Mall wants to put up a lot of solar, that's probably a great thing. I'm very much a proponent of solar, but you might want the planning board to be able to say, well, yeah, the traffic flow will still work. You still have plenty of parking, but they could say, well, maybe if you put it over here, it might be a little better than if you have it there, but they can't require them to do it. It's not really a voluntary process. They have to go through the process before they can get the building permit, but they can't turn something down. So it's not a true impediment. It's maybe a slight delay, but I think both the applicant and the town could come out better if they go through this process. So I want to make sure before you vote this down that you understand that this is not it's not a totally burdensome process, and I think we could have some very good results. Get solar, perhaps improve it a little bit from what the applicant might have initially wanted to do, but still it would go forward. So I just want to make sure you know that before you vote this down, because I think it's actually a good balance of solar versus the community. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Harris.
Mary Harris, Precinct 5. I think it was Article 3. We looked at pictures of telephone poles and wires that were put up with no regulation whatsoever. If in those years, about 100 years ago, everybody said, wow, do we really need electricity? It's the best thing that's going to save us. And we better let us put dead trees up every 50 feet and string wires everywhere. There might have been someone who at that time who said, gee, you know, maybe we ought to regulate where those are going to go and what they're going to look like. And here we are talking about spending $3 million a mile to get rid of it. The state law says you won't do anything unreasonable in the regulation. It doesn't say you won't do nothing. I think to have the town have a little bit of an ability to say, maybe it's appropriate here, maybe it isn't appropriate there, would be something we should consider.
Okay, Ms. Siegel. No, you don't want the floor? Okay. Mr. Hargraves?
Peter Hargraves, Precinct 9. I'd like to underline what my colleagues have just added here, but with a slightly different tilt. I'm not sure whether this includes single-family or two-family residences. It sounds like it excludes it under some conditions, but in any case, 1,000 square feet is substantially more than what would be needed by a single homeowner to put solar power into their home and to size the system reasonably and economically to enjoy the benefits of solar. And so I ask you to consider the other side of this, which is the private and personal right that people have, and I'm talking about abutters and those adjacent to a substantial structure like this, 1,000 square feet, more than what a single-family home would require. And I would appreciate the oversight, the abutter notices, and a site plan review before it's just granted by right that someone could put this wherever they want it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Donahue?
Bob Donahue, Precinct 3. Is the building inspector here, or whoever you would go to get a permit and who would oversee this project? I believe that's the building department. Is there somebody here that could answer a couple of questions?
Okay, yeah. Go ahead, you can ask the question while he's walking up there.
Well, the first question is there standards on height, width, basic things? I remember back, because I have gray hair, when gas stations first started to put a rooftop over their pumps, and everybody said how ugly they were. Today, if you needed gas this morning, would you have gone to a gas station that did not have an overhang for you to protect you? But could you ask the question, are there building requirements to put one of these things up in my parking lot?
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, RTM members. My name is Rod Palmer, Building Commissioner. I'm a little confused with your question, but yes, we do have height limitations for structures in town. Typically, it's 35 feet for principal structures and 22 feet for accessory, but maybe I'm not quite sure what you call it.
A gas station, take we'll use the Stop and Shop gas station. They have it covered. You're undercover. That's about, I would guess, 15 feet maybe.
Okay.
Maybe you know exactly what it is. That's what I'm trying to say is that if I want to build something like this, I have to come to you. There's
That's right.
got to be some kind of regulation on it. So we are protected. I want everybody to feel they are protected on the, you just can't willy-nilly put up one of these structures and it can't not fit in with the, I don't know what the term is, guidelines or rules and regulations of putting up a structure for solar or for anything else? Just a cover. I mean, there must be some kind of rule for putting up a cover.
There are. Maybe as an example, somebody mentioned Kenyon's Market, and that might be a good example, where there's solar panels mounted on stanchions or structures in the parking lot. Those structures are designed by professional engineers, and when they come to the building department for a permit, we analyze the structure, we analyze the zoning aspect of it, and if they comply with both, typically a building permit is issued. They're rather unique in their design, so it's nothing that's prescriptive in the building code, so it requires professional engineering for its unique design. But to answer your question, there are zoning bylaws that regulate height and area and lot coverage, and there are building codes that regulate how it's to be put together.
And if I wanted to put one of these things up, I have to get some kind of professional help.
You do. If you mount solar panels on a single-family home, I know that's not what we're here to talk about. I believe this article exempts 1 and 2 families, but if you were to apply for a building permit to put solar panels on your roof, it requires engineering. So,
Thank you. I'm voting against this because I think it's covered. We have, the building department covers the structure. There are rules and regulations to what a person can do. You or I can't go in and do it ourselves as a little project for the weekend. So what's the problem? Please vote this down.
Okay, Mr. Leary. Mr. Latimer, you're on the list.
Peter brought up a very good point that site plan review gives the public a chance to weigh in on something, because we have open meetings, this is all discussed, and if it's a by right thing, you don't get that opportunity. So I just thought I'd put that in your heads, that you get a say in these things, and more in the light of being transparent. How many times do you drive around town and you see something, it's like, where did that come from? I never heard about that. There wasn't any hearing. And this is all this is. It's just, we're not anti-solar, believe me. We're the ones who permitted the rink having their solar array. We pushed for the solar field out in the landfill. So we feel that we're being crucified for being anti-solar, and we're not. We just want to have some reasonable regulation, which the state law allows. So think about that. Thank you.
Mr. Patrick.
Matthew Patrick, Precinct 7. I was involved in writing the state legislation, and it distinctly says no regulation should be put in place unless it's to protect the public welfare, health, and safety. I can't believe that the owner of one of these parking lots is going to build one of these things to inhibit parking or traffic flow or limit parking space. They're very concerned about aesthetics, and I think they're going to do a good job just to make sure that people come to their shopping malls. So we have a directive from the state. Let's make this a priority. Vote no on this article, please.
Okay, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Grant Walker, Precinct 3. I went to several precinct meetings in preparation for this town meeting in the last 2 weeks. At one of those meetings, one of the planning board members said that there's a story going around that we, the planning board, are anti-solar. We're not anti-solar. And now this evening, Mr. Leary, a member of the planning board, said pretty much the same thing. And I think that's important for all of us to realize. The planning board is not against solar. They're not anti-solar. I think they're caught in the responsibility that they have to take care of us. And so they don't want just anything going up anywhere. They feel that that is their responsibility, and I think that's perfectly legitimate. And I have tried in a variety of ways to push the planning board to allow solar and to promote solar. So I imagine that I might be perceived as one who thinks that they are anti-solar, but I do not. I think that they are just, in a way, overwhelmed with the responsibility of protecting us and protecting the town. But I think there's too much confusion here with this article. And part of the confusion is Article 11, which refers back to this Article 7 and says, well, if Article 7 doesn't pass, we're going to try to get a complete moratorium on solar energy in Falmouth. And so I just want to make this point to begin with here. Everyone here who has spoken to vote no on this article because they feel it's too restrictive and so on, their arguments to vote no should not be interpreted as favoring or justifying a moratorium. I think that would be the worst thing. The problem is we can't talk about Article 7 without talking about Article 11, the moratorium article. Now, Mr. Hargraves, one of the previous speakers here, referred to, I think, residential properties. I don't think only them, but residential properties. My understanding from what I've heard at planning board meetings and speaking with members of the planning board is that somehow this article, even though it doesn't say so, does not apply to residential properties. And as a matter of fact, Article 11, the moratorium article, when referring back to Article 7, this site plan review article, offers an explanation that says at the end that the planning board wants to encourage solar in building zones. But that's not stated in Article 7 that this applies to building zones. And if you look at the zoning requirements for building 2 zones, where a lot of properties, commercial properties are in the town, there are setbacks and there are minimum lot coverage, maximum lot coverage, I should say, allowable by structures and by parking. Part of the confusion with Article 7 is how many times would the space underneath a solar canopy be counted? Once because it's already paved and that's parking, a second time because now it's under a structure. That's not clarified. And so...
Okay, Mr. Walker, you're at 4 minutes.
Am I finished?
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Ms. Putnam? Ms. Putnam?
Rebecca Putnam, Precinct 9. I'd ask that we move the question.
Okay, the question is coming on closing discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And the chair said the ayes have it by a 2/3 majority, and the question is moved. The question will now come on the main motion as amended. Remember, we added professional land surveyor to section C. So the main motion as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. With a majority of noes, I declare there is no 2/3 majority and the article does not pass. Article 8. Article 8, Mr. Chairman, for the main motion.
Moderator, Bob Leary from the Planning Board. I move to, this is motion from Article 8. I move to amend the zoning bylaw by adding a new Article 48, large-scale ground-mounted solar overlay district, and to amend the official zoning map by adding a large-scale ground-mounted solar overlay district along the blacksmith shop corridor proximal to the power line easement on large parcels where tree cover and landforms have previously
Mr. Leary,
been...
could you just pause for one moment? We have a slide, correct? Okay, because there's some language here that's different than what's in the warrant booklet, so I want folks to see this. Go ahead.
Okay. Large parcels where tree cover and landforms have previously been impacted, consisting of lot numbers 1603, 002, 000, and all-inclusive up to 22020500M that are under the utility easement as printed in the warrant, with the following changes and additions, substituting Planning Board for Site Plan Review Authority in the following sections. Section 240, 252D, 240, 253, 240, 253F, 240, 254G, and 240, 254J, 240, 255A, 240, 255A3, and finally 240, 255C.
Mr. Fox.
This article adds 158 acres of solar to the town. And where it really came from is we've been working on solar zoning for almost 10 years. It was the first thing we came up with was the light industrial C complex. It was specifically designed for solar. It was discussed a lot, it was brought forward, and we actually thought we could then start moving it on the landfill, and then any other lands around that zone up and down this corridor, all they'd have to do is apply for a light industrial C, and we thought we had it changed. In listening to the hearings and from town meeting members telling us and regular residents that they're really concerned that changing the zoning wasn't the right thing, because everyone was worried about what happens when the solar isn't there, and if it's zoned in light industrial C, now you have agricultural land that's all of a sudden zoned commercial, and you get warehouses on it. And people didn't want that, and we listened to them, so we came up another way. This way, by putting in an overlay district, we get the notices, we get the setbacks, and in 10 or 20 years it stops, or even they stop using it for a year or two, it reverts back to the original zoning that it was there, and everyone has the protection. And that's what people told us they wanted. So this is a change. We were moving for a long time on solar with going to light industrial C, and now we've come to the conclusion that it needs to be done this way for the main reason that it's listening to what the towns want and moves it forward. It's solely listening to what town meters want and try to bring as much solar as we can with the town. Anyone that thinks we're against solar, we've been working on it for 10 years. We just think it needs to be done right and with reasonable regulation, and that article's over with, so I won't go any further.
Okay, discussion on the main motion. Mr. Latimer.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Richard Latimer, Precinct 1. I certainly never meant to impugn the motives of the Planning Board. I think they were misguided in the last article because it would have the effect of deterring solar development. On this article, I think the purpose is a good purpose. However, I am concerned about some of the specifics of the site plan review. If we look at section 240-253, required documents, there are things that we would want to see in a site plan review, but there are things that I think we cannot require. Things that affect the aesthetics of the project. Specifically, the vegetation. Well, certainly if we're looking at the vegetation that's going to be removed, we can certainly look at things like, well, erosion, effects on the land, the things that affect the public safety and the public health. But when we talk about screening, now we're getting into aesthetics. And that's frankly something that we can't do. So I think this, and I can't amend this by the bylaw on the floor here, but I think this is something that requires a little more thought as to what the standards for the site plan review would be. I just think we want to avoid things that tend to be aesthetics, tend to give neighbors grievances, because we want to encourage these developments, but we, as the Planning Board says, we want to do it in a way of these large-scale developments that is responsible and reasonable, but the standards for that reasonableness has to be directly related under statute to public safety, public health, and public welfare. Thank you.
Further discussion on the article? Yep. Mr. Jones?
Doug Jones, Precinct 1. One question I have is anytime we talk about any energy resource like that, where we put a restriction on the size based on kilowatts, means that if energy production improves tremendously, if we get better at using photovoltaics, we are now restricted, saying only because of the amount of energy they produce, and that really does not refer necessarily to the size of the project. It just talks about the amount of energy that's being produced by these things. And it could be that fairly soon, because this technology is changing very quickly, that we end up having a very small photovoltaic program that can produce a lot more electricity than we're allowing in this. So I'm a little concerned that we're including a number of kilowatt hours in the restriction of a large plan.
Okay, further discussion? Mr. Walker?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Grant Walker, Precinct 3. I like this article. I do agree with the Planning Board that this is one representation of their commitment to solar. But this article actually has two distinct parts that we have to vote on with one vote. And the first part is the part that establishes the overlay district. The second part is the part that applies that concept of the overlay district in that one particular location, the blacksmith shop corridor, as defined there. That's quite different than the coastal pond overlay district that we discussed earlier this evening, in which the bylaw was created first, and then later, as tonight, the additional areas were added to the areas that were already there covered by that bylaw. So I think that we should consider separating this article into two articles. Mr. Latimer has already identified certain things that might be questionable in the overlay district definition, but in addition to that, the dimensional and setback requirements that are specified in this article are considerably greater distances than those spelled out in the Massachusetts model guidelines for large-scale ground-mounted solar overlay districts. In those Massachusetts guidelines, the front yard setback is 10 feet. The side yard, well, the front yard setback in Article 8 is 100 feet, 10 times greater. The side yard setbacks in the Massachusetts guidelines are 15 feet. Here in Article 8, they are 35. Similarly with the rear yard. So I think we ought to create an overlay district. I think that is an excellent idea that is promoting solar, but we should not assume that every area that might qualify for large-scale ground-mounted solar overlay district would require exactly the same dimensional requirements as specified here in Article 8.
Okay, so Mr. Walker's making a motion to divide the question. If we divide the question, the first question will be on whether or not to create Article 48 of the zoning bylaw. And then we would have a vote on the district plot plans that were up there. No, I thought that's what I heard you say. You just wanted two separate votes. Well, that's not what I heard you say, so why don't you tell me what you want to do? Because I heard you say you wanted to take two separate votes.
Well, Either that, or we could just amend the current article and vote on it all at once. I have an amendment that I would suggest. So it's either separate it into two articles or do something like this amendment.
Okay,
The on-
yeah, it wouldn't be two articles, it would be two motions, and
Yeah.
then we would vote on each motion separately.
Yeah, but if we vote on the overlay district, we should not vote on it as it is defined because it has those excessive minimum lot size and setback requirements.
Okay, so how you would do that is you would amend the portion that deals with Article 48 of the zoning bylaw.
Yes.
And then you would vote yes or no on that, and then you would go back to the main motion, being the second division of the question, which would be where you put it on the map.
Yes, or we could just keep the whole thing as one article for one motion with an amendment that changes the setback and minimum lot size.
So what do you want to
requirements.
do? It's your choice.
I'll do the second. We'll keep it as one motion.
Okay.
And
Do you have your amendment in writing for the clerk?
yes. Shall I read it?
Sure.
Okay. Amend Article 8 as follows. In Part 240-254, Site Plan Review and Operation Standards, add the following sentence following the word standards and preceding Part A of that section. The minimum lot size and dimensional requirements specified in Parts A and B of this 240-254 section shall apply to the solar overlay district along Blacksmith Shop corridor as defined in this Article 48 of the zoning bylaw.
Well, you can't refer to an article in the language of a bylaw.
Okay. So I'd have to strike that. I'm sorry. Okay. So shall apply to the overlay district along Blacksmith Shop corridor, whereas other large-scale ground-mounted solar overlay districts may have different specifications for minimum lot size and dimensional requirements, such as those suggested by the model as-of-right zoning bylaw allowing use of large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installations prepared by the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources dated December 2014. I can give you that in writing. And that
Okay,
would
we got
help.
a couple of issues. You can't refer to the other document, town council is telling me.
Oh.
And we can't refer to the article.
Okay, so
Do we have a slide or anything? The what? I'm here, there's too many people talking at the same time. In the first section. Can you just bring it up here in writing so we can take a look at this?
yes.
There is no slide. He's doing this on the fly. Oh, the main motion? Can we put the underlying motion on the slide, please? Okay, Mr. Duffy, I'm going to recognize Mr. Duffy to discuss this, the referencing of the model bylaw and how that is an issue for us.
The amendment that Mr. Walker has proposed, I guess I'll just read it. The minimum lot size and dimensional requirements specified in parts A and B of this 240-254 section shall apply to the solar overlay district along the blacksmith shop corridor as defined in this article, Roman numeral 48, I guess, which is the article that we're adding by Article 8. And then, whereas other large-scale ground-mounted solar overlay districts may have different specifications for minimum lot size and dimensional requirements, such as those suggested by the model as of right zoning bylaw. That's a kind of an indefinite reference to another document, which is really not allowable in a zoning bylaw, which has to be very specific. And then he goes on to say, allowing use of large-scale ground-mounted solar voltaic installations prepared by the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources dated December 2014. Again, that's a reference to another document that's not included in the zoning bylaw, which has to be specific. So I have problems with this amendment.
And therefore, I'm going to deem the amendment beyond the scope. Mr. Swain? Microphone, please. With a microphone, please.
This article is too large and cumbersome to be changed on town meeting floor. It should be voted down, back to the planning board, put it together properly, and then represent it at the next town meeting. Thank you.
Ms. Shepherd?
Susan Shepherd, Precinct 1. I don't think we need to amend this at all. We're talking about a minimum lot size of 7 acres. It can be a lot larger. 100 feet on 7 acres is actually a very small distance. I don't think we need to go down to 10 feet or change anything else. I think it's fine the way it is.
Ms. Lichtenstein?
Lichtenstein, Precinct 8. Through you, Mr. Moderator, to the Planning Board, I would like to know what their reasoning was for increasing the suggestions of the Mass Energy Commission. I mean, what was the reason for larger setbacks? I support this, but I'd like to know what the reason was. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Tom Bottom, the town planner here in Falmouth, Mass. And if you bear with me, I'd like to run a couple slides by you after the motion. If you would click forward to this next one, please. Yes, so this is largely just a comparison to let you know that this is different from an accessory use. This is a primary use. This is not something you put on your house. This is not something you put at Kenyon's. 250 kilowatts is the standard that the state uses in their model bylaw for differentiating what is a large scale and what is not large scale. So 250K is what that is. Kenyon's corner is 185 kilowatts, so it's about 75% of a large-scale solar array. If you flip to the next slide, please. So in our discussion, in our research, we use this aerial photography for identifying what the district is. Those very large white spots that you see, is that a pointer? Nope, let's stop doing that. I'll just run this. So those very large white spots you see on the ground, that's the actual aerial photography, and those are areas that have already been mined. So we use this to look at where the area was there was some interest in. When I first got here, we had a couple of inquiries for solar in this district, and then later on we also had another inquiry for the folks at Lawrence Lynch as well. So with that in mind, we identified these particular parcels that had already been disturbed along the corridor. There's now 10 corridors, 10 parcels in this corridor. The 10th one was added at the request of Lawrence Lynch because there was one parcel that was left off of the array of the initial analysis that I had done. So this has a 7-acre minimum lot size. There's a 100-foot vegetated setback from the street because if you look at the street along the blacksmith shop corridor, for the most part, there's a power line easement that runs along there anyhow, and you can't actually put anything under the power line easement. The utility will let you go under an easement to get to it, but won't let you put anything under it. So essentially, when we go back and look at this aerial photography, that sort of tan strip you see on the right side of the road, that's a power line easement. So essentially, that power line easement is most of that 100-foot front yard setback. So we looked at 7 acres as a minimum lot size because 7 acres was the smallest lot here. If someone decides they want to take their 65-acre lot and come in with a commercial subdivision plan, they could create additional lots for additional solar in this area. Those 100-foot setbacks are essentially to screen this from the road as you drive down the road because, as we pointed out, they are very large lots. Where solar abuts solar, we use the setbacks that are already in the zoning bylaw. That's 35 feet from the side. Where solar starts to butt up against a residential or agricultural use, there is a 100-foot setback. In the conversations and the discussions we had at the hearing, we heard people say, I think the setback is too big, I think the setback is too small. It's a pretty indication that you're probably pretty close to the right area if not everybody loved it. There is a maximum of 2 acres of clearing. The reason why we picked this corridor and these areas, because they've already been disturbed. There are no shortage of people who will tell you the carbon offset for solar and how many trees you're going to save. But there's no shortage of people who will also say, it doesn't seem very green to cut down trees to make a solar thing. So in our bylaw, which comports with the bylaw I wrote in the town of Kingston and also with the town of Barnstable, there's a maximum of 2 acres you can clear for trees, because trees have a lot of benefits. In addition to carbon offset, they take up water, they deal with stormwater and issues like that. There is a decommissioning bond as well. So in the event that solar becomes the last best thing, there's a decommissioning bond that will go into place that will require the applicant to remove the solar from the site. We went further and looked at each of these parcels, and I won't bore you with these parcels because you may have seen them. I've been sending out some emails to kind of keep people in the loop best I can. My apologies for my emails. So these are actual topos of the areas that show the 100-foot and 25-foot setbacks on each of these parcels. There's 37 acres previously disturbed. There's 17 acres previously disturbed. There's 50 acres previously disturbed. There's 18.71 acres previously disturbed, and on and on. So we took a fair amount of research and look at what we were actually doing here and not just creating something out of the model bylaw. The model bylaw, which is this based on, will tell you there are large scale, there are medium scale, there are different versions of that bylaw as they put together. And they also note this is not something you would just take the top of and put the name of your town in there and vote it as a bylaw. It informs folks for the bylaw for the size and the scale of what they wanted. In the model bylaw, we use the parts for large scale solar over 250 kilowatts. I think we put together a very good opening salvo into solar. Zoning has unintended consequences that I never want to be associated with, so we've done our very best to take an incremental step, an opening a very large part of the town where the market has seen a need or a desire for these things on parcels that are already previously disturbed in an area I think that will work as our opening salvo for solar. And happy to take any other questions.
Okay, Mr. Stone, in the back, Mr. Stone.
Michael Stone, Precinct 6. I'm a resident taxpayer. Although I didn't agree with the planning board putting forward a potential solar moratorium, I think Article 8 is well thought out. The setbacks are very conservative. They're more conservative than the state guidelines. I grew up within about a mile of these lots, and these are sand pits, basically, that don't really have a higher use at this point. So I would urge the town meeting members to vote this forward. I think it's sensible, it's well thought out, and it'll help develop solar in Falmouth. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Buessler.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ken Bissler, Precinct 2. I want to speak strongly in favor of this article. We've heard a lot of, I'll call it like nitpicking about setbacks and the permitting process. I think the fact that we have all of these components within a new way to actually bring solar to this town is great. They've picked, I think, a good location, we saw from that map, to be doing this type of thing. If we want to put overlay districts in other parts of town, we can have different overlay districts with different rules, but I don't think we have to go back and ask them to wait another year to change a few words that someone else is going to object to. There are about 180 people here. We all have our own ideas of what the proper setback is, but we're getting presented here with a well-reasoned, thought-out plan for this part of town that I think we should support. If we think it's wrong in the future, we can come and change some of these things in this particular overlay district. But I think it's basically got all the components that we're looking for to move solar forward. So I urge us to vote in favor of this article.
Okay, Mr. Brown.
Hi, Douglas Brown. I just want to speak in favor of this. There's a new state energy program. It would be a shame to have this delayed and have these people miss out on these incentives. So let's not wait.
Okay, Mr. Lowell.
Nick Lowell, Precinct 5. I'm probably the only one, but I'm a little confused. And it has to do with the way that this article has been presented. In the warrant book, it lists one thing, and I'm fully expect at this point that when we get a recommendation, it's not as what was printed in the book. So I was prepared for that. And at my precinct meeting last week, I was given a handout that had the new article in it, which was quite a bit different. Okay. Then when I walked in here, I got a different thing.
Let me address that for you. Let me just address it right up front. So the substantive, multiple, nuanced changes in the handouts that some town meeting members received, which said it was the new article. There is no such thing as redrafting the article after the warrant has been posted. So that was the first issue. The second issue was the recommendation listed on your handout for the, quote, new article was as printed, which it couldn't be because what is printed is what is posted legally by the Board of Selectmen in the warrant booklet. And so when it became evident between the planning board, myself, and folks getting ready for town meeting that there was a substantial difference between what had been handed out as an article. It really wasn't the article because it wasn't posted. The best way forward was to go and simplify where we had to actually get the lot numbers listed in order to put this thing on a map. So we had to put that in the main motion. And then the second slide, can you do one more slide for me? And then to make all of those references and to leave the rest of what was printed in your warrant booklet the same. Should we need to come forward in the future and make minor adjustments, perhaps we could do that, but that the underlying, as printed in the warrant, was good enough with these two changes to move forward.
So even what we just got handed when we walked in the door is different than what's shown up here on the board, which is confusing to me.
Yeah, so what you got handed when you walked in the door, which I got handed when I walked in the door, is the recommendation included half of what I just spoke about, and the explanation gave those plot numbers. They should have all been listed as the recommendation.
So it's your opinion that this motion that we have here is valid and would go forward should it be approved tonight?
It's, yes, as a valid motion, that's correct.
So in the event that this doesn't pass tonight, I would hope that when we come back in the spring, we could get this article split into two, have one that creates the overlay and one that calls out the lots, which is the way we've more typically done it.
Okay.
But I support the article. Thank you.
Okay, let's see, Ms. Elder? I think it is, yeah.
Thank you. Catherine Elder, Precinct 6. I totally support this article. I think the planning board did an excellent job, and I wanted to thank them. But I do have a concern, and I'm not sure if anyone here can properly answer it. It was brought up at my precinct meeting, and it was concerning the use of herbicides underneath any kind of a solar array. And I noticed that it was not covered or dealt with in this article or this bylaw, but I got a message, an answer at the precinct meeting that indicated that it was covered by Massachusetts law. And if there's someone here that could speak as to how or where that could be dealt with or controlled, if it's the Board of Health, I'm just interested in understanding whether people would be able to do it or if this would be something someone could oversee.
Yeah, Mr. Duffy?
That subject is covered by regulations of the Department of Agricultural Resources, We don't have a copy of it with us here today, but they have a rather comprehensive program on herbicides.
So they're regulated by the state agency, herbicide use. Mr. Donahue?
Bob Donahue, Precinct 3. I remember last town meeting, we had a discussion about the Lynch property and whether it was put back to the, I'll call it natural state that they were supposed to put it back to. Will all this land that the solar arrays be put back to what they should be, whatever that was? I'm not familiar with exactly what but I believe there was some kind of conditions because some people did bring it up at that time, and saying that, as I say, that it was a reason to vote it down, which we did last town meeting. And number two, Mr. Jones brought up this subject about the capacity or output of these units. Is there any limitation on the capacity? Because as he said, this kind of thing is changing very, very rapidly, and you know, I think anybody who goes into it would want to have the capability of expanding it if they had the opportunity to do so.
Mr. Pott?
250 kilowatts is the floor, not the ceiling. So 250 kilowatts is the threshold for what is large. What is larger than large is larger than large.
Something about restoring to previous.
I am not familiar with that.
Yeah, I'm not either. I don't know. Okay. Mr. Herbst? Mr. Herbst? On your mark, get set, go.
Yeah, Ralph Herbst, Precinct 8. I received an email this afternoon that said that the Energy Committee supports this article. If you look at this article and you see how involved it is, it can't be developed quickly. Obviously, the planning board spent a large amount of time on this with the help of the town planner who developed a similar plan in 2 other towns. So I can't see how we could not support this article. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Latimer? And then we're almost here. I got one more.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Richard Latimer, Precinct 1. And for Ralph's benefit, I'll explain how I do not support this article as drafted. I do support the overall thrust of the article, the purpose of the article. However, when I hear a 100-foot setback from the road without any explanation of how that is in any way related to public health, safety, or welfare, I have to think aesthetics. What else? Oh, we're told there's something about, well, the lots are there, there are already power lines, et cetera, et cetera. Still, okay, why a 100-foot setback? The problem I have with that is there are other reasonable restrictions, such as wetlands, such as the need to protect trees, such as the need to have the maximum size of these installations, which the 100-foot setback, based on nothing but aesthetics, would restrict the ability of this owner to develop the site to its full potential. So that's one problem I have with it. Another problem I have with it is in with the site plan criteria. Well, physical features including roads for the project site, that's fine. Changes to the landscape, grading, vegetation, clearing and planting, so far so good. Exterior lighting, you need it. Screening vegetation. Screening from what? Again, we're talking aesthetics. I'm not nitpicking here. I'm talking about problems with this as drafted. If we could simply amend this to eliminate all that language that has to do with aesthetics, to just put in the numbers of the setbacks that on the model legislation, I'd have no problem with this. I think it's been said that maybe we should just say, come back in the spring and make those changes, and this would be a perfectly fine piece of legislation. But I think it has flaws which unduly restrict.
Your 2 minutes is up.
Thank you.
And am I correct that you were the first speaker and you spoke in favor of this? Did you change your mind? I have you as my first speaker speaking in favor. I must have misheard you. Okay. Ms. Putnam?
Rebecca Putnam, Precinct 9. Again, I'm asking that we move the question.
You were the last one on the speakers list anyway. Okay, so we're going to go to the main motion. The main motion as presented by the Finance Committee. As by the Planning Board. It's these lights, they're too bright tonight. All those in favor of the main motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. So for the chairs that the ayes have it by the 2/3 majority, and I so declare. Article 9. The recommendation of the Planning Board is indefinite postponement. This was a petitioner article by Mr. Zweig. Mr. Zweig for a main motion. See if we can get through solar tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Ron Zweig from Precinct 1, and I move the Article 9 as printed.
Okay, Article 9 as printed. Mr. Zweig.
I have slides. Okay. I have a presentation. Oh, okay, great. Is there a pointer? The top button. Is that it? Okay. Whoops. Sorry, everybody. Okay. Thank you. It's getting a bit late. All right. This particular article is actually a complement to Article 8 that we just considered. And in a nutshell, Article 9 would revise Falmouth zoning bylaws to allow ground-mounted solar as a primary accessory use in all light industrial districts. Currently, it is allowed only in light industrial C district as a primary use per section 240-64.3. Falmouth has 3 different light industrial districts, A, B, and C. Oftentimes they're considered to be solar farms. They don't necessarily have to be that large to be in a farm context, but this article does not apply to roof-mounted solar or parking lot canopies. So this is what's printed in the booklet, and this really is interesting in that I have to thank the Planning Board and the legal department for the excellent work that they did in working out the ground-mounted solar for light industrial C. What we have here is essentially the same language that is in the town code, and what it is doing is basically applying similar or the same language for industrial districts. Again, industrial districts A, B, and C, and so this is the main point. In addition to adding the capacity for light industrial C to have accessory use in addition to primary use. So as we've discussed earlier, solar is a good neighbor, it's quiet, no moving parts. After construction, very little activity, does not generate traffic, does not use town services, schools, sewers, water, etc. from an aesthetic standpoint, it's, you know, if you look at it, you could almost consider it in a similar way to large parking lots in town, except they don't generate more traffic congestion or pollution. But in terms of the aesthetics, we can look around town and see the numerous parking lots, some of which abut residences such as the steamship authorities on Palmer Avenue, as well as the one in Woods Hole. Again, we've already been through this aspect about the state law, Chapter 48, Section 3, that basically warrants or allows solar to be developed unless there's an adverse impact to public health, safety, or welfare, and that would be considered in any application. So looking at the scale of all of these districts, there are, the three. There's light industrial A, light industrial B, which is basically the technology park, and light industrial C, which are actually 2 sites. So the total area is about 1.6% of the town of Falmouth. So here are the locations of the various sites. What I'd like to point out with this little button here is that this is light industrial C, where we have the solar array in the town dump. But here's another light industrial C area. And in this particular one, there's a business there, there's a building on the site, there's a house on this side of it and a butter, there's a home there, and there's also 2 houses right across Thomas Landers Road on the other side. So it's basically in a location where they can do ground-mounted solar by right in an area where there is business as well as residences. So we can look through these. I mean, I sent maps around to everyone. Hopefully you got them. But these are the different areas where the light industrial A. This is Little Pond area. This is like wood lumber, not wood lumber, Falmouth lumber area, and et cetera. There are other sections spread around town, but they're relatively small. And some of them are, if we look at, there's some concern about being in the vicinity of residences, but we have this area here around wood lumber and these along here where there are residences on the street side on Locust Street, like with the steamship parking lot. There are houses right along the edge of it, right next to the large steamship parking lot on Palmer Avenue. And so this is the essentially few areas and would be not so different from other development in town. So in concluding, I'd say, it makes sense to allow ground-mounted solar in industrial districts, in addition to the proposed overlay district. So I ask you to support Article 9, and again, I think that this is an opportunity to advance renewable energy development and to allow private holders and businesses to expand, again, safe, reliable energy in the town that has very little impact. And it's not so different in terms of development to others. And as they've discussed this evening, that the town bylaws, regulations, and everything would control development in terms of height, setbacks, other aspects, as with any other business. And other business would make a decision, would be making business decisions on whether to do it. And some of these areas, though, I will say, have already been developed with apartments and businesses, and they likely would not be developed further, or maybe some supplement. But the main thing is that they should fit well within our community. Thank you.
Discussion on the article? Mr. Fox?
We feel the solution is to just change these, if the neighbors want it, to light industrial C. That's why that bylaw was developed. We think it's perfect. The main reason why we developed light industrial C is because we have very large commercial or residential developments. We have Carlson Lane and Woodrise, and these are all in industrial zoned areas. And we just feel that there's better places in town to do it. There's areas in Locust Street, the whole back of Locust Street, the very, very dense area. We don't think it's necessary to put it there. We believe we have great areas in this town where solar can go, where the trees are already cut down, because the state also restricts you cutting down trees. You don't get the same deal on solar if you cut down trees. It's greatly prohibited. If somebody wants solar on any one of these parcels, they just come to us. They want it rezoned. We have a public hearing. The neighbors all come in. We zone it light industrial C, and away we go. That's the best way to do it. We think this is too far-reaching, puts it everywhere over town with no thought process, no impact from the neighbors, just putting it in. We are creating in our first bylaw 150 acres of it. There's more to be done. It should be done with an overlay district, not this way.
Okay, we're at the witching hour. Mr. Dufresne? Okay, we have a motion to go beyond 11 to complete this article. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and we're going to go past 11 to complete this article. Further discussion on this article? Mr. Latimer.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Richard Latimer, Precinct 1. I support this article because it promotes solar development. I think Mr. Fox's suggestion sounds too much like spot zoning. Oh, somebody wants to put up a solar panel, well, we'll come in and we'll have a zoning hearing to rezone. I think that the issues surrounding the use of these solar panels, solar installations are adequately covered in terms of health, safety, and welfare because of the building commissioner's oversight. I don't think anything more is needed, and I think we should pass this article as written. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion, Mr. Walker. Other side, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Grant Walker, Precinct 3. I support this article. I ask all my friends and neighbors here to vote yes on this article. If light industrial A, light industrial B, and light industrial C all together comprise only, what did you say? 1.6% of the land area in the town, it's not as if this will spread solar arrays all over the town. And secondly, I don't think that we should disadvantage business owners and other property owners in light industrial A and light industrial B in terms of denying them the right to help offset their utility costs with solar. Thank you.
Okay, the question will come on the main motion. Mr. Fox? Okay, Mr. Fox?
They can have solar as an accessory use, okay? This is a primary use. That's just not a fair statement. And as far as spot zoning goes, that was used the last time, and Richard should remember, because he was on the planning board, we got a letter from the Attorney General saying that because it's part of a long-term plan that we've been working on for years, when you start a new zoning process, the first place you put it, everyone's going to scream spot zoning. You got to start somewhere. So it's definitely not spot zoning. We have a letter from the Attorney General, and I really think it's wrong to declare it that way.
Okay, Mr. Latimer?
Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. Richard Latimer, Precinct 1. I have no personal interest. I don't own one of these pieces of property. But if I did, what Mr. Fox is suggesting, instead of just simply going and getting a permit from the building department and putting up my array that is allowed by right, I have to go before the planning board and get my property rezoned. That is a burden. That is an unreasonable burden. Whether it is spot zoning or not, it is an unreasonable burden that deters the development of these parcels? And what is going to happen at this zoning hearing? Oh, you're going to hear all the opponents coming in who will have all kinds of grievances, not related to health, safety, or welfare, but basically related to their own property values and aesthetics. So I say let's pass this as written and let's move on towards the 21st century thrust, the wave of alternative energy that has to come and replace fossil fuels. Thank you.
Okay, the question will come on the main motion.
I would just like to say, just to follow up, that what Mr. Fox is saying, I mean, we have building rules that Mr. Palmer explained to us. We have a state law that says that you can't really reject things on aesthetics and this kind of thing. This has been passed by the state, and I think that we have to keep that in mind. And particularly with regard, as Mr. Latimer mentioned earlier, we're really in kind of a crisis situation. Every little bit helps to offset the advancement of adverse impacts. We're looking into coastal resilience issues and all of these things, and these all play into helping with mitigating those impacts. So I think this is just could be a good business decision by someone if they go ahead with it. It just gives people the opportunity to do something positive. Thank you.
Okay, the question will come on the main motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. This requires a 2/3 majority, so let's cue a slide. Okay, all those in favor of Article 9 signify by pressing 1A. All those opposed signify by pressing 2B. Yeah, it's usually pretty quick. Melissa Keith hasn't voted. Carol Murphy was here before the break. 119 is 74. 119 plus 74. 193 divided by 3 equals times 2 equals 128 plus 129. By a kind of vote of 119 in favor and 74 opposed, there is not a necessary 2/3 and the article does not pass. The meeting will stand adjourned until 7 o'clock tomorrow.
Falmouth Community Television's coverage of town meeting is sponsored by the following corporate underwriters.
Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Carlson Printing for all your printing needs. 508-548-7303 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@aol.com. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by MegaNet Communications. MegaNet offers a wide array of internet services including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server co-location, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their number one goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net. Additional funding and support provided by the following corporate sponsors.
Barrett Plumbing and Heating offers expert plumbing, heating, and air conditioning services to all our residential and commercial customers on Cape Cod and surrounding area. We are a full-service plumbing specialist offering professional workmanship to suit your budget. Whatever your heating or plumbing need, you can always count on a job that's done right.
Dogs and Hogs, family owned and operated for over 5 years. Our slow smoke barbecue is available for dine-in, pickup, or catering, now featuring our homemade barbecue sauce. We also serve beer and wine, have gluten-free options, and lobster rolls.
RJ's Variety and Liquor, family owned and operated for 15 years. We have a variety of beer, wine, and liquor, local frozen stuffed quahogs, local frozen pizza snacks, and more. RJ's Variety and Liquor, 174 Sandwich Road, T-Ticket. The attorneys at Oppenheim & Nickerson LLP have provided legal services in Falmouth for over 36 years. We advocate for our clients and work to provide quality representation in the areas of business and corporate law, real estate law, estate planning, and estate administration. 508-548-8255.
We at Falmouth Fish believe there is nothing better than a fresh piece of fish, direct from the waters of Cape Cod in New England. Nothing beats waking up at 4 a.m. to search out the highest quality seafood from the best fishermen in the world.
7 Stars Academy, offering martial arts and Tai Chi. Training at 7 Stars Academy can transform your life. It's amazing to see the positive impact it has on our students. Classes for adults and children of all ages. Confidence, not conflict, at 7 Stars Academy of Martial Arts.
Hamilton Tree and Landscaping has been proudly serving Falmouth and the Upper Cape since 1978. Located on Route 151, we're available for all landscaping and tree concerns. Appreciating your property is our motto as we continue to keep your tree and landscaping needs our top priority. At A&A Paving, we believe in providing customers with quality products supported by excellent service. We provide commercial and residential seal coating, asphalt paving, and repair services for Cape Cod and southeastern Mass. A&A Paving, 508-540-4944.
Calfee Insurance, offering insurance policies for your car, home, business, life, and disability. Calfee cares about all your insurance needs. 508-540-2601 and online at calfeeinsurance.com.
Thomas J. Bunker and Jeffrey E. Reither are BSS Design, providing land surveying and civil engineering in Falmouth since 1987. Licensed and fully insured, they're located on Catherine Lee Bates Road, and their phone number is 540-8805.
Wild Harbor General Store, located in historic North Falmouth Village, providing quality goods and services for 170 years. Continuing to make history with our support of FCTV's coverage of Falmouth Town Meeting.
Liam McGuire's Irish Pub. With a newly renovated dining room, it's what an Irish pub should be. Main Street, downtown Falmouth.
Bayside Kitchen and Bath at 419 Palmer Avenue in Falmouth, where design and installation professionals work closely with homeowners, architects, and builders, offering a full range of cabinetry, countertops, and faucets. Bayside Kitchen and Bath, returning you to beautiful spaces.
Eastman's has been Falmouth's hardware store since 1913. With a newly added retail space providing kitchen accessory and gourmet foods, our friendly staff is available to assist you with your hardware and kitchen needs. 508-540-0407.
Carpet Barn, Carpet One Home Showcase, a local family-owned business offering all your premier carpet and flooring needs. They also feature tile and vinyl floors, area rugs, window treatments, and kitchen and bathroom cabinetry, serving you at 4 convenient locations. Cavosa Disposal is proud to provide trash removal, recycling, and composting to local businesses in Falmouth and surrounding communities. Cavosa Disposal would like to thank its customers in Falmouth. Cavosa Disposal, 508-563-5070. Family owned since 1919, at Puritan Cape Cod you'll find the latest in men's and women's clothing, as well as ski and tennis equipment and much more. Located on Main Street, Falmouth, and in Chatham, Mashpee, and Hyannis. Puritan Cape Cod, 199 Main Street, Falmouth, and online at puritanCapeCod.com.
FCTV is also supported by the following businesses and organizations.
Nobska Lighthouse and Maritime Museum, friendsofnobska.org. Falmouth EDIC, Economic Development and Industrial Corporation, 508-548-7440. Partners Technology, Voice and Data Solutions, 781-930-5000. Wacoit Congregational Church, 508-548-5269. Annie Hartcool, Global Real Estate Advisor, Sotheby's International Realty, 508-868-0664. St. Elizabeth Seton Church, 508-563-7770. Vincent Associates, 548-6500. Turning Point Dance Studio presents the Sea Captain's Nutcracker at Tilden Arts Center in Barnstable. Soares Flower Garden Nursery, 508-548-5288. M. Duffany Builders, 508-540-3625. Cranberry Nail Spa, 508-495-9999. Neighborhood Falmouth, 508-564-7543. Danny's Barbershop, 508-548-6013. Carl F. Cavosa Excavating, 508-563-5530. Paul's Precision Automotive Repair, 464 Main Street, 508-548-3164. David Rogers Electric, residential, commercial, industrial, TV studio, and motion picture, 508-564-7507. Murray and McDonald's Insurance, 800-800-8990. The Davy Tree Expert Company, 508-548-2662. Andy's Barbershop in the Falmouth Plaza. Chapman Cole and Gleason, 508-540-4172. Hanush Jewelers, Downtown Falmouth, 508-548-9107. Mahoney's Garden Center, 508-548-4842. The Cape Cod 5 at 508-457-5252, capecod5.com. The Cooperative Bank of Cape Cod, 508-495-5010. Martha's Vineyard Savings Bank, 508-627-4266. VIPS of Falmouth Volunteers in Public Schools, 508-548-1621. Cape Cod Cleaning, 508-563-7622. Steve's Pizzeria and More, 508-457-9454. FCTV also thanks Roach Brothers, Stop and Shop, and Windfall Market.